The chains on my wrists were cold enough to burn. I stood in the middle of a circular hall built from black stone, and every eye in that room belonged to something that was not human. My knees wanted to shake, but I refused to let them. Weakness was the only weapon they expected from me, and I had spent 3 years learning to hide it. Guards pressed me forward until I stood before a raised platform. On it sat the Queen of the Valkyrie Dominion, a being with silver skin and eyes like liquid glass, wrapped in robes that seemed to move on their own. Her name, I had learned in secret, was Isuvel. No human was supposed to know that name. No human was supposed to know anything about her people beyond the sounds their translators gave us. Flat and lifeless, stripped of all meaning. She looked at me the way someone looks at an insect they are deciding whether to crush or study. Beside her, an advisor with a long crest on his skull spoke in their native tongue, the one their translators never bothered to give us. "This creature was found near the shipyards again," he said. "It should have been terminated on sight, my queen. Its kind cannot even speak properly, let alone understand a warning." I understood every word. My heart pounded, but my face stayed still. I had been a prisoner of the Valkyrie for 3 years, ever since my transport ship was pulled off course and captured near their border. In that time, I had been passed from cell to cell, from labor camp to labor camp, treated like livestock that occasionally proved useful. But somewhere in that darkness, I found something no one thought to take from me: their language. It started with a caretaker named Doris, an old Valkyrie worker who muttered to himself while checking on prisoners. He never imagined that the silent human sweeping his floors was memorizing every sound. Then came the guards who argued outside my cell at night, certain no human ear could follow their fast, layered speech. I listened anyway. I built the words in my mind like a puzzle, one piece at a time, using patterns, repetition, and pure stubbornness. By the end of the first year, I understood simple commands. By the end of the second, I understood conversations. By the third year, I understood their court language, the formal dialect only nobles and royalty were taught, the one used in this very room right now. I never spoke it aloud, not once. I was afraid that if they knew, they would either kill me for the threat I posed, or lock me away somewhere I could never use it. So I stayed silent, and I waited. "Bring it closer," the queen said, her voice smooth and sharp at the same time. 2 guards shoved me forward until I stood at the base of the platform. She studied my face the way a hunter studies tracks in snow, searching for something she could not name. "Humans are said to be resourceful," she said, not to me, but to her advisor. "Yet in 3 years, this one has never once tried to escape. It only watches. It only listens. I find that curious." The advisor sneered, "Or it is simply too stupid to plan anything greater." I kept my eyes down, my expression blank, my hands steady despite the chains. Every instinct told me to react, to defend myself, but I had learned patience in the dark far longer than I had learned their language. The queen rose from her seat. The hall fell silent as her robes shifted with each step down the platform. She walked until she stood directly in front of me, closer than any of her kind had come in 3 years. "I have decided," she said, turning to address the room, "that this creature no longer serves any purpose here. It will be sent to the outer colonies, where such things are disposed of quietly." The words were formal, distant, meant for the court, but then she paused, and her voice dropped into something private, something meant only for herself, spoken so quietly that even her advisor had to lean in to catch it. "I am tired," she whispered, in the court dialect, the one reserved for royalty alone. "Tired of ruling a people who see strength only in cruelty. Tired of decisions that feel like small deaths every single day. I wonder sometimes if anyone will ever understand what this crown costs me." She did not know I understood. She believed those words were safe, hidden inside a language no outsider could ever hold. I felt something crack open in my chest. Not fear, not anger, something closer to recognition. She was not simply a ruler passing judgment. She was a person, exhausted and alone at the top of a system that gave her no room to be anything else. I could have stayed silent. I could have let her walk away and let the guards drag me toward whatever fate waited on the outer colonies. It would have been the safe choice, the quiet choice, the choice that kept my secret buried forever. Instead, I raised my chained hands as far as they would allow and asked, in halting gestures, for something to write with. The advisor scoffed. "It wants ink and paper. What foolishness is this?" The queen studied me for a long moment, then gave a small nod. A guard produced a thin metal stylus and a smooth writing tablet, tossing them onto the floor in front of me. My hands trembled slightly as I knelt and picked them up, not from fear now, but from the weight of what I was about to do. I wrote slowly, carefully, forming each symbol of their court script, exactly as I had practiced in secret, 1,000 times inside my own mind, tracing invisible letters on my palm during long nights in captivity. I wrote in the formal dialect, the one meant only for those born into her world. The words were simple. I told her that a crown does not have to be carried alone. I told her that strength is not the same as cruelty, and that a leader who feels the cost of her decisions is not weak, but rare. I told her that I had heard every word she believed no one could understand, and that I would carry that secret the same way I had carried her language, quietly and without using it against her. I slid the tablet across the floor toward her feet. The hall was silent, except for the faint hum of the lights above. The advisor stepped forward, alarmed, reaching to intercept the tablet, but the queen raised a hand and stopped him without even looking his way. She bent down and lifted it herself. Her eyes moved across the symbols. I watched her expression shift from confusion to disbelief to something that looked almost like fear, though not the kind that comes from danger. It was the fear of being truly seen after years of being alone in a crowded room. She looked up at me, and for the first time since I had arrived in that hall, her voice lost all its formal edge. It became small, human, in a way I never expected from something so far from human at all. "When did you learn our language?" she asked. The advisor's mouth opened, then closed again, as if the question itself had stunned him more than any weapon could. I met her eyes and answered in her own tongue for the first time, my voice rough from years of silence but steady enough to be understood. "The first night in your prison," I said. I never stopped. Gasps rippled through the hall. Guards shifted uneasily, unsure whether to react with violence or awe. The advisor took a step back, his crest flattening in shock. No human had ever spoken their court language aloud, not once, not in the entire history of their empire. The queen did not step back. She did not call for guards. She stood there, holding the tablet with both hands, staring at me, as though seeing an entirely different creature than the one who had been dragged into her hall in chains. 3 years, she said quietly, almost to herself. 3 years of silence, and you understood everything. You could have used this against me. You could have sold my private words to any enemy who would listen. Instead, you chose to comfort me. I chose to be honest, I said. That was all I had left to offer. She set the tablet aside and reached for my chained hands. I expected her to inspect them, or perhaps signal the guards to remove the restraints as a simple formality. Instead, she lifted my hands gently and pressed her forehead briefly against my knuckles, a gesture I did not recognize, but one that clearly meant something significant, judging by the sharp intake of breath from every noble in the room. Then she leaned closer, and before I could react, she kissed me. It was brief, but it was enough to silence the entire hall, enough to make the advisor stumble backward into the arms of another noble, enough to make me forget the chains, the years of captivity, the fear that had followed me since the day my ship was captured. When she pulled back, her eyes held mine with a steadiness that had nothing to do with politics or empire. "In our tradition," she said softly, "such a gesture is given only to those who see us as we truly are, without wanting to use that truth as a weapon. You did not learn our language to survive, human. You learned it to understand us. That is a gift few of my own people have ever given me." She turned to her guards, her voice returning to its commanding tone, though something warmer lingered beneath it now. "Remove these chains," she said. "This one will remain in the palace, under my protection, not as a prisoner, but as a guest who has earned the right to be heard." As the metal fell away from my wrists, I felt the weight of 3 years lift with it. I had spent that time learning a language no one believed I could master, hoping only that someday, someone would listen. I never imagined that listening would lead me here, standing beside a queen who no longer saw me as a creature to be studied, but as someone who finally understood her. And as the hall slowly returned to its usual rhythm, whispers spreading like wildfire through every corner of the palace, I understood something else as well. The greatest weapon I had ever carried was not strength, or cunning, or defiance. It was patience, and the simple, quiet act of truly listening to someone the rest of the world had stopped trying to understand.